Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Product Coalition podcast. It's great to be bringing you another Sydney-based episode of the podcast series. Andrew Grishenko, thank you for joining me today.
Hi Jay, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Looking forward to chatting today about continuously developing as a product manager. It's going to be a really important topic for everyone involved in product management. First of all, I want to give a big thank you and shout out to our location sponsor, Brainmates. Brainmates is a product management training and consulting team based in Australia, New Zealand and Denver, USA. Find out more about Brainmates' 3-day course for product folks on the 9th of December in Denver at brainmates.com.au. If you've just discovered Product Coalition, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're a global product management community that started out as a publication at productcoalition.com back in 2014. Product Coalition also has a Slack community of 5,000 product managers around the world. It's free to join. You can head over to productcoalition.com to grab an invite. If you'd like to watch this podcast, you can see Andrew and I on YouTube by searching for Product Coalition, and we're 100% funded by the community. So if you'd like to support the podcast, the publication, the Slack community, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/productco. Andrew, great to have you.
Hey, how are you?
It's good to be sat recording with you. Andrew and I worked together going back, I think, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We shared some product experiences working on the same product and integration back then, which has been good. 5 years on, here we are recording a podcast.
Yeah, here we go.
Let's see what we've learned in that time.
Let's see.
Andrew, before we get into continuously developing as a product manager, we're going to talk about continuously developing as a Sydney-sider. Okay. So with each of the guests, we've had a pub quiz, a Sydney pub quiz. We've got 3 questions for you. So, Andrew, how long have you lived in Sydney now?
10 years.
10 years?
Yes, it's been 10 years.
10 years Sydney's home.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, let's see what you've learned in 10 years.
Let's see.
All right. Now, have a guess. What % of the population of Sydney was born overseas?
On average in Australia, I think it's 20%, but in Sydney it should be 30% at least.
Excellent guess. 31.7% of the population of Sydney was born overseas. Correct, compared to 22.2% of the overall Australian population. Big immigrant population base, which is great. Okay. Do you ever get out and enjoy the Christmas carols in the Domain?
I haven't, but it's on my bucket list.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
I know.
Do you know what year Christmas carols in the Domain? The Domain is a big park. For those listening around the world and not been in Sydney. Big open grassland, slap bang in the middle of the city almost. In what year did Christmas carols in the Domain start?
Oh, have no idea. Won't even pretend.
No worries. Okay, 1982.
Okay.
There we go. So quite the tradition there.
Mm-hmm. Already.
Okay. Lastly, we're going to talk about that big opera house.
Yes.
On the harbour there. Okay. What year was that completed?
Oh my gosh, you're just pushing me hard. Was it 95?
No. A lot older than that. 1973.
73, yes. Oh, actually it's one, yep.
1973 took 14 years to build, 10,000 construction workers. And in one of the other episodes, actually, we talked about the cost of it. It was 14 times over budget.
Yes.
So
it was actually awful from the project management perspective, but also a big shout out to the architect,
right,
who managed to find a way to make it producible, to make it
right.
To make
Kept it
happen.
going,
Yes.
found the money.
Yep.
Little bit of scope creep.
Actually, making the technology and learning from the mistakes as well, yes.
Yeah, I haven't actually been inside the Opera House,
Okay.
which I should do while I'm in Sydney.
Definitely.
Andrew, what's your favourite spot by the water in Sydney? Have you got a favourite water spot?
Oh, it's obviously all the Sydney Harbour, including Darling Harbour. There are so many water spots, including the beaches. I'm not a beach person, but I like walking by the beach. I'm not a surfer, but like walking. A Speed Bridge is wonderful.
Speed Bridge, yeah.
Yes, okay. Wonderful place to chill and have good food there.
Right.
I recommend that place too.
Great. And being in Sydney, is there a favourite product or any meetup or conference that you particularly enjoy?
This year I didn't attend any, but I've been with the Brandmates meetups. They've been organizing a few meetups, which I really enjoyed.
Fantastic.
Recently, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Before we get jumped into today's topic about continuously developing, do you mind sharing your background and your path into product and to where you are today?
Yeah, maybe in 1 minute I'll try to make it short.
No rush, all good.
My background started with the technical hands-on. I started developing applications, but I always worked working with the end users and trying to understand what they actually want. And, product manager, product owner roles were not there yet. It was mostly kind of BA or was programmer analyst.
Right, okay.
But the same kind of thing started questioning is what is most important to spend your time on. Then I worked in the bigger companies. Then I worked, my kind of most pure product role was with in Moscow, in Russia, when I was actually doing computer games productions. I was a producer on a few titles for the computer games. And it was a really interesting experience, especially after the corporate world.
Right.
Because in corporate, you have users who tell maybe they want directly, or you have requirements coming.
Right.
In the kind of mass market products like games, there's no one telling you, it's a little bit art and science, how to make a successful product that people will love and, come back when they don't have to, right? It's not like they job to do. Yeah. And then I moved to Australia and been here, like I said, 10 years and really enjoying this time in Australia. I need to repeat my history of Sydney and when the Harbour Bridge was built in Opera. And I've been working in a couple of companies, but most of the time I spent in Telstra, where we work together, and also have some of my individual projects. I released a couple of mobile games on the market, which is also an interesting experience from the product perspective.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you so much. Let's get stuck into continuously developing, and we're going to break this down into a couple of themes. But to get us going, could you talk about learning and your personal learning experience in life first, and how that shaped your perception of how we should learn and develop as individuals?
Okay, I first remember that bright toy when I was a little boy.
Right.
No, it was later. Look, the learning usually when people say it's associated stereotypically is with like school or university. This is where you learn, and this is how it actually was when I finished university, and it was quite straightforward. Then you go to university, you learn your trade and degree, and then you start working in that.
And for context, Andrew, for those listening, you're originally from Ukraine?
Yes, I'm originally from
education would have been in times of the USSR?
Yes, it was actually Soviet Union, and that collapse of the Soviet Union, so it was quite turbulent times back then.
But did a lot of the education standards continue in Ukraine regardless of that?
Yes, it's actually Soviet education and engineering education was quite regarded around the world. And as you know, for example, like Russian engineers, Russian developers, programmers are quite well known for their math skills and technology skills. And as I said, like doing university is no longer just one way of learning. And with all the change in career, change in technologies, I had actually to do it all the time, right? And doing in very different modes, reading, studying, attending courses, and doing hands-on. That's an important part of the learning as well. So that's how I learned.
Yeah, and obviously product management, there's changes in what we should be across continuously as product people, regardless, I'd say, of the functional role. Yeah. A lot of terms or training paths become fashionable, hit trends, get exploited, some could say. So we've obviously had human-centered design or design thinking have an immense amount of focus on it, rightly or wrongly, in a number of recent years. What's your thoughts around how product people pay attention to staying on top of the trends and the movements and staying up to date of learning?
Yeah, I would say two things to start with. It's first of all can be quite overwhelming, right? All this information, all these different angles, and as you said, the second thing is as a discipline, the product management. So if we are talking digital products management, to kind of narrow it down a little bit. It's still quite fresh, quite new, right? It's been basically as a discipline recent few up to 10 years, right? Before that, probably not many people managed. Not many people mention it. So how to stay on top? That's a good question. So because it's fresh and new, it's constantly developing, it's actually forming, right? So there is no one who knows, when it becomes routine, like I don't want to kind of call out anyone, but if accounting or bookkeeping, for example, it's a discipline that established 200 years ago, right?
Okay.
And now it's well understood. It's quite a science behind it, right? It's quite routine. Yeah, there are its own tricks and learnings. But product management is very fresh, so it's constantly changing. So we constantly need to pay attention to see what's happening, listen different angles, and it all works out. It's like cooking, right? It's in the cooking. I think this discipline is in the cooking.
Nice. Everyone's still learning, I suppose, even learning what ingredients are there.
Yeah, exactly.
Without even worrying about the recipes, just learning what are the new ingredients coming for us to experiment with. You mentioned in your intro there that you've personally developed a couple of products yourselves, particularly in games. Can you tell me what is it about taking that approach that helps you learn technologies, methods, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's very important for a product person to actually have their own pet projects, whether they become commercial or just for community or something else, doesn't matter. But that's an opportunity actually to apply. In work environment, you have constraints always. It's life about constraints, but that's fine. That's probably just another world when you can apply, when only constraints is basically yourself, your resources, what you have, your thinking. And and sometimes to face the challenges that you put in front of your team and now trying to solve them themselves. I worked in a pair with an artist, she's also Ukrainian, Alina Vygovska, and it's collaboration of two people on creative project. It's very interesting, dynamic, and learning the market, learning the marketing, how you find people on that market, how you address them, and there have been some learnings, like mistakes. And learning is also, nowadays, is a synonym, how you kind of recover from mistakes. You just take learnings from that, yeah.
Awesome. So many people I speak to come into product from software perspective. I'm keen to know in the world of games, how do you experiment that you're getting your game recipe right in terms of difficulty and levels and all of the complexities and variables that come into a game? How do you experiment and work out that recipe? Because I imagine it's, for me, I'd assume it's a lot more complex than software development, where we typically got a funnel that we want to direct someone through. You've got a lot more variables to play with in games. Is that true?
First of all, kind of it's large landscape, different platforms and different game types, like, starting from racing, shooters, adventures, etc. Within genres, there are some kind of common patterns, but if you play an adventure, you expect to have a quest or maybe to have upgrade, right? Something like that. But all other things, it's creative, and that a lot depends on the genius and creativity of the team, right? And sometimes it's one person who is driving the whole idea. Sometimes it's the team who in that, collaboration and enthusiasm come up with great ideas. But however ideas are great, it is important to put them in front of the users, right? So there is no kind of anything different there, and see how they play. So there are two things. Checking that concept works, right? You can do it quite early. And then checking that the balance works, right? Because balance is a fine-tuning which actually can make or break a product. because some products can have the same gameplay, for example,
Right.
but because of the balance, absolutely different people can play. Like
Right.
casual, it's something easy, entertaining, and or hardcore, where people, really.
Okay.
And it's difficult to create one game that would suit both audiences.
Right. Okay. So I suppose, like any product, then this comes back to knowing your customer and the context they want to consume your product. Is it a quick fix on a tram or a train, playing it for 5 minutes,
Exactly,
and
yes.
trying to get
Exactly, yes.
a quick adrenaline hit out
Yeah.
of the game and some satisfaction,
Yeah.
versus someone sitting down and playing a game intentionally for
Yeah.
4 hours
Yeah,
on a
deep
Saturday
diving,
evening?
Yeah. And that's the thing that I keep talking to people who have been mentoring, is that my easy kind of test is ask a product manager who is the product for. If they say for everyone, it's a fail, right? So we
Yeah.
need to start again. So and understanding your audience is not just separating, young people or middle-aged people, right, or males from females. Sometimes it's relevant, sometimes it's not. It's more, as you said, about particular situation in their day, in their life, and their needs, right? So
Yeah.
that's
The environment. Now, I know, bring it back to learning, Andrew. Yourself and your partner, Elena, have tried to tackle and create a new way of learning with Power Labs.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk to me about what's driving that, and what have you seen in terms of an opportunity and how you're approaching that?
Yeah, so we organize the meetup. There is meetup.com, when you can organize your own meetup, and there are a few, and like Brainmates have their own meetup. And but what we notice is that it's one thing, like when I watch something or even read, and completely different learning experience when I do something by hands-on, doing actually with my hands. And it just gets into my mind, right? So those practice exercises that you have in training. And then we decided, okay, let's try to run a meetup when people not just, sit back and listen, but actually come with the laptops, and we will do them, just some kind of training, but give them a scenario and walk them through the steps and let them achieve, and they actually walk out have created something.
Awesome.
And it's been already five labs. So we try to run them every month.
Great.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting experience, and people seem to be happy and really taking that. What it's called experiential learning, right? It's the most powerful way for adults, and not only adults, to learn the new knowledge is actually by doing it.
Right. I certainly that resonates with me. I need to get my hands dirty and experience and play and do things wrong in order to understand how to do things right. So it's great that you create that safe environment to be able to.
And
to
actually, you're right. It's safe because we also, one of the things we are saying, it's non-competitive environment. It's not hackathon. There is no winner. So we took competition out, right? And people of different levels, some faster, some slower, but we help everyone to get 1 hour to get to result.
Great. Let's go down a particular theme with regards to learning and technical knowledge and technical competencies. What are your observations when it comes to, look, you've worked a long time in the world of product management, of how people could or should build up technical competency?
Maybe just a bit on the background. Why technical? Because all the wonderful, not all, but many wonderful products that we see in software, they enabled by technology, right? So it's not like those old worlds when people come with the business idea and then just implement it. It's more technology suggesting some business ideas, right? And that's why it's important, I think, to have that knowledge of the technologies and know the limitations of that, and know where your idea may struggle on the market, because it would be, for example, the technology is not reliable and fiddly. And there have been some products launched even in Telstra which were not successful just because the technology were not really great. The idea was great, but the technology was not suitable, right? There are opposite examples, of course.
Yeah, okay. So with regards to technical understanding there's foundational is critical, is what I'm hearing from you, and that's to identify opportunities and constraints. What else with regards to working within a team as a product person? What values does those technical competencies bring for you?
I just realized that I probably didn't answer your question about how you learn, but I'll expand on that a little bit. So in the team, look, if you're talking about software products, you have multidisciplinary team, hopefully, that have all required skills to build your product, which you have UX people, you have developers, you might have whoever you need to build the product. Despite that the team need to be great cohesion between the team, there is also still some specialization, especially like technology people, like developers versus UX people. Not versus, but it's like kind of two flavors, a little bit of different personality sometimes, and different skill sets, obviously. We all want to be T-shaped, and this is especially important for the product manager because he or she interacts with both, right? And they need to understand that, right? An ability to understand when lead engineer, for example, calling out that something will not work and suggesting an idea that something better could work, right? So that's the technical knowledge of the product owner can really help them to do that, right? And how can they gain this knowledge? Again, through the learning, through the interest. I think if there is an interest and desire, the all other thing is just how.
Right, okay. Yeah. Similar to technical knowledge, and I'd say this is almost underrepresented by product management people as a competency, is the world of facilitation and hosting effective workshops. And we were fortunate to spend some time together earlier in our career where we had some great facilitators or people who were paid just for facilitating great workshops for us. What have you learned around the world of being a product manager and ensuring that you get your workshops right and they're well facilitated? What are some of the things you can advise?
It's actually interesting. That's completely opposite to kind of technology in a way because it's people, it's engineering conversations. And that also has its own laws and art and science. So for me, most interesting part in the workshop, when you have a group of people and you have limited time and you have some problem to solve, and walking into the room, having some plan but not knowing the answer, and relying and making up the people dynamic in the room and structuring their time and leading them within that time through this workshop to get to those outcomes that you all want. And so in this formula, there are a lot of already defined. So you need to have right people in the room. You need to agree on what the outcomes really you're expecting, right? And this is what to start with. And yeah, you're right. We learned from great people, and I applied that learnings and found it's quite interesting that seeing people dynamic in the room, seeing when the room is bored, seeing when the room is distracted, seeing when the room is excited, seeing when the room, is going in some rabbit holes, when it splits into different subgroups, which one group is disengaged, the other group is, discussing some topic. And for the product manager, because it's a lot about conversations, right? And workshop with the user is probably separate. More what I can probably about workshop with the stakeholders.
Okay.
Which can be, all your sponsors, can be your executives. Yeah, depends on your environment.
And could you talk to me about how have you learned to do that well over time? Because unlike technology where you can go and jump on Amazon and do a certification or buy any type of online course to learn coding, frameworks, patterns, etc. When it comes to facilitating workshops, how have you found it effective to improve the way you do that over time?
Yeah, so first of all, I was part of as I said, those facilitators that run workshops, so I just observed. So observation, so take part first, probably if you're new into that, just observe, right? And observe some good ones, observe some bad ones, in terms of outcomes, I mean. And see what works, what doesn't work, then just practice that. But I think there is also a little bit lacking of that kind of theory, a little bit, because there are some principles, and I'm thinking of putting them together, some kind of an article or publication, of putting some principles that if you think about those and line up those, like preparing, having the right people, having the right agenda, having the right conversation, how to manage the side conversation, how to get in the authority up front. What is authority, right? Because you may be just, all people in the room may be much more paid than you, they may be C-suite executives, right? But if line up those things, I think people can apply, and from doing that, they can learn and see.
What I love is the point you raise around product managers bringing ownership to the workshops they're running there. And I think that's really important, is don't expect other people to do it for you and take the lead.
Cannot sit in the room back.
Yeah, don't just sit in front. Yeah, okay, fantastic. Thank you for sharing so much, Andrew.
Okay, thanks for having me.
It's been really, really good. Time's flying.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of the Product Coalition podcast. Today's guest was Andrew Grishenko, and we spoke about continuously developing as a product manager. It'd be interesting again, Andrew, to do this in 6 or 12 months and see what you've learned as further continuous development. Thanks to Brainmates for hosting this Sydney-based series of the Product Coalition podcast, and I look forward to sharing another podcast guest with you next week. Thank you all.